This is the Mohsin Mortgage Program with Sarah Mohsin. Mohsin Mortgage is licensed in several states for residential and commercial purchases and refinancing. Call 800-662-9550. And now, here's your host, Sarah Mohsin.
It's great to be back here again, folks. It is Friday. I'm so very, very happy to have Dr. Anne Maria DeMars. She is an amazing woman. I'll tell you, I had a chance to meet her at the International Sports Hall of Fame and interview her there in Columbus, Ohio. How are you, Dr. Anne Maria?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Fantastic. Listen, I was so amazed at all the things that you have done. You have 4 daughters. You're a family person. You're all about building and being of service. You're the president of 7 Generation Games. It's an adventure game that teaches math and social studies, English and Spanish. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, if you imagine playing anything, whether it's World of Warcraft or Candy Crush, and the time you spend doing that, if all that time at the end of, say, level 20, you had were ready for algebra, that you had mastered everything leading up to that. That's kind of what we do. And I get perturbed by the fact that, the best and brightest of the generation before mine, when I was a kid, I'm watching them send a man to the moon. And the best and brightest of our generation, what are we doing? We're trying to get people to click on some link so they go to some site and buy yoga pants. I mean, we're optimizing search engines, and I just thought there's got to be something more to do with your time and talent than that. And when I look at what's the biggest issue facing us in America, I think one of the things is inequality of income, that's going to come up and bite us. Another thing is the lack of opportunities for people that are in low-income, urban, or remote rural areas, the lack of jobs, the lack of extracurricular activities, just everything. And I thought, how could we address that? And one of the things I tell my kids all the time is I have a gold medal from the World Championships and a PhD. And one of those lets us live by the beach in Santa Monica, and it's not the gold medal.
Right.
And there was a coach, gosh, I wish I could remember his name, and he said, all these kids say they want to play in the NBA, and people tell them, follow your dreams. And I tell them, forget your dreams, kid, follow math. Because math is going to get you a good job. Right. And when I look at a lot of kids, I see, a lot of games are targeted at very small kids, teaching them to add or something like that. And those kids are the easy ones because they're, you look at first, second graders. I don't know if you have any kids, but when they're little like that, they think you're amazing. Mom knows everything. Dad's the strongest person on earth.
Yeah.
And then they get to that age where I'm not doing my homework and you can't make me. And you can't make them.
Right.
You can't. You could take away their Nintendo. You can tell them they're grounded, but you can't make them do their homework. And there's a lot of parents that don't even try. Not necessarily they're bad parents. Maybe they're working 3 jobs and they're not home. So, maybe they never went past 8th grade themselves and they really can't help. So we thought, what can we do to make a difference for the lives of millions of people? And one, I suppose there's lots of things you can do. You can try and find a cure for cancer, but then I thought, well, what am I capable of doing? And I thought, well, I'm good at math. I've taught at every level from 8th grade all the way through doctoral students, and I'm good at programming. And I happen to be, I was in Washington, D.C. This sounds like it's unrelated, but it's not. I was with my friend who was president of the school board on the Spirit Lake Dakota Nation. He's Sioux, the Dakota Sioux. And so we were invited out there to analyze the National Indian Education Study. So we were invited out there to analyze the National Indian Education Study, and we found out that the more kids learned about their culture in school, the more they learned their language, the more they learned their tribe's history, the worse they did in math, which we did not expect. Or I didn't expect. And my friend, who was the president of the school board, said, well, it makes perfect sense because there's only so many hours in a school day. And if you're studying Dakota, you can't be studying math, if you take hours out to study your culture. So we're driving back to the airport, and he says, you have to do something. I'm not going to accept that my kids will learn their culture or they will learn math. And I have to this day not figured out why it was my job, but I thought, well, I can do that. I can make a video game. And I've wanted to do that for years. But when I was in graduate school, I said, I want to make, when you apply for your doctorate, they ask, well, what is your plan for your research? And I said, I wanted to make video games that would teach kids math.
Right.
But 30 years ago, if you think what a computer could do, it was just text. So it would ask a question, you would answer, but it wasn't that exciting. So I did it. It wasn't that exciting. I went off and I did other things. My husband passed away, and I had 3 little kids, so I had to go out and make money. Mm-hmm. And a startup is not a real secure thing to do. So I finally looped back around when the kids were big, and I made enough money doing boring programming to be able to take a leap of faith and work without pay for 2 years. And now we have games that actually are proven to work, that the kids who play our games improve their math scores 3 times as much as the kids just in the regular math program.
Well, I mean, Dr. DeMars, you're remarkable. I mean, you have a 6th-degree black belt in judo. I truly think you're an amazing human being. You've said a few things which hit home. You believe in leaving the world a better place than you found it, and to let your life not be limited by other people's expectations. So those are really key things. You are a big believer in education. You are very much a person of service. You have 4 beautiful daughters. You're a family person, as I'd mentioned. You're also an author of a book on judo. I think we had some wonderful conversations prior to our interview here about how fitness has also been something that has worked for you. What do you recommend for young kids and children in general? I mean, I think math is super important. It's difficult. It was very hard for me when I was a child. I literally hated it. So any tools that are useful, like the 7-generation games, to make it a fun, sort of way to learn about math or Spanish or English is so very, very useful. What about fitness and being involved in fitness? Your daughter is a well-known figure as well. She is, you can share a little bit about her, Ronda Rousey as well. So she's been in sports. You both have been listed on the Forbes list to look out for. She under 30, you over 40, right? So interesting.
Right. I think we're probably the only mother-daughter.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Cool.
Yeah, very cool. So all very impressive, yet you're so humble. I so enjoyed just meeting you in Columbus during the International Sports Hall of Fame. You were one of the inductees. And then for all that you've accomplished, you're such a doer, and you're so down to earth and so easy to speak with. You are involved in all different things for folks from all walks of life. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, I teach judo at Gompers Middle School, which is in South Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And Rhonda actually started that program. She was just back from winning a medal in the Olympics, and her sister, who's a year older, was doing her student teaching at Gompers. And they had just finished teaching about Budo, the code of the warrior and all that in history, which is what Jen teaches. And she asked Rhonda, do you know anybody who might be willing to start a judo program here? We have no money, so they would have to do it for free. Mm-hmm. And Rhonda, who was just broke as could be, because she just came back from the Olympics, she was working a couple minimum wage jobs, said, I'll do it for free. Mm-hmm. And so she taught there for 2 years, and then when her MMA career took off, and she didn't have time, I ended up taking it over. So I teach judo there every Friday to a group of middle school and high school kids, and it's absolutely terrific. I think there's a lot more connections between doing a startup like we're doing and winning a world championship than maybe appears on the face of it. Mm-hmm. Because people often say, I went and won the world championships and now I got a PhD and run a startup, where the other people who get a world medal in judo, they start a gym or they sell mats. But one of the things kids learn from sports is that there will be failure. Mm-hmm. Yes. And if you're starting a company, that's a fact as well. I mean, not every product will be a winner right out of the gate. In fact, just like in any sport, your first draft of everything is going to be lousy. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially if you come from a group that isn't the stereotype of who's supposed to be making software or who's supposed to be winning at judo, it's easy to get discouraged because you're told, oh, this isn't a thing for women or girls, or this isn't a thing for, people of your color or whatever. And then when you first start doing judo, or when you first start, ice skating, say, or when you first start making software, at the beginning, you're not going to be very good because no one is.
Right.
And if you keep at it, I guarantee you, whatever it is, you will get better. You maybe won't be best in the world, but you will get better. You know, a friend of mine, Jim Pedro Sr., in fact, he's my co-author for Winning on the Ground. He said he tells kids that it's funny, but it's true. He tells them, if you keep training at judo, eventually you will win some matches. He said, because someone's got to come along worse than that kid. You know, if you've been, but it's true. If you've been training for a while, you might be the worst kid in the class, but eventually someone's going to be worse than you because you're going to keep getting better.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things that kids learn from sports. And I've asked myself that a lot because, you know, Rhonda spent half of her life competing in judo and in MMA. And when she was young, I took her to judo practice 6 or 7 times a week. And I thought, well, was that the right thing? You know, my other kids, Jen has a master's from USC. Maria has a degree from NYU. Julia just got accepted at Lesley University. So I'm thinking, well, is that the right thing? What did she learn from that? But I believe that if you do it right, and I think that if you do it right is a key phrase,
right?
That you learn a lot from sports, that you can learn that you can lose and get back up.
Absolutely.
That you can do things that you are afraid of. I see so many people who are held back in life because they're afraid. They're afraid. And the things they're afraid of are, if you actually wrote them down, are probably pretty silly. You know, they're afraid people will laugh at me. Well, so what? They're not going to come out and beat you with sticks. Maybe they will laugh at you. And, you know, maybe the people in the stands will laugh at you, and you'll never see those people again. You don't know any of those people's names, right?
Agreed.
And it's the same thing with starting a company. Maybe your first product won't be that good, and some people will post nasty things about you on the internet. Oh, well.
Exactly. And that's what I have to say. It's Dr. DeMars, so wonderful having you on air. And I definitely would love to have you back on. You're a doer, and it's all about just, it's difficult for folks who may have the fear factor. We all do, but it's not about winning. It's just getting it done and doing what you think may seem impossible. But the experience at the end of the day is all that matters, right?
Well, that is part of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. I wake up in the morning, and I am excited to work.
Right.
And, you know, when I was competing, I woke up every day, and I was excited to go to practice. I think if you lose that,
right, the
you
joy,
should do something else.
Right, yeah. The passion. I agree. You know, Dr. DeMars, I'll have you on again probably in a couple of weeks if you're available. I know you're traveling. Is there a website for folks to just look at 7 Generation Games to know a little bit more about your company?
Yes, there's 7, it's the number 7, 7generationgames.com. And I would highly recommend, in addition to, of course, buying our games, but I would highly recommend to checking out the blog because Maria does one, Parenting Like I Know What I'm Doing, which is pretty hysterical. And I do one that's just all about starting a company and randomly anything software related or what it's like to start a company or whatever policy issue in education I feel like ranting on that day.
Well, thanks for being on air with me, Dr. DeMars, and I hope to have you soon. Okay? Back.
All right. Thank you so much.
Stay well, folks.
This has been the Mohsin Mortgage Program with Sarah Mohsin. Mohsin Mortgage is licensed in several states for residential and commercial purchases and refinancing. Call 800-662-9550.